Okay, so let's start looking at actually getting some stuff into this and setting things up. So I've deleted some of the bits that we don't need, but it's basically the same scene that we had last time. What I want to talk to you about is this grid, because now I've got rid of those things, we can actually see it, and how the grid works and how the snapping tools work, because they're going to be our friend when it comes to doing some modular stuff. So if you look up here, there's this movement, rotation, scale widgets, which we know the shortcuts for as being W. If I hit E, you get this. R, you get that. This cycles through different coordinate systems, so we can use like world, local, that kind of stuff, which again, if you use 3D, you understand what those things mean. And then these are the snaps for the grid. So basically, you can switch this on to enable snapping, or switch it off, and then you can actually set the grid value, snap value, and this will change the size of the grid. So it's set to 10 at the moment, so that would be 10 centimeters, because Unreal units are one Unreal unit is 1 centimeter, so that would be 50, 100, 500, 1000, 5000, 10,000. So if we set it to something that's you're probably more likely to be able to see the effect of it. So let's say 100, so that's basically like a meter snap. Then if I bring an object in, like a cube, at the minute this is not switched on, so I can just move this fairly freely. Whereas if I switch it on now and then bring the same object in, it snaps when I bring it in. And you see when I move it, it snaps increments. And it's the pivot point that's doing it. So if you look, it's the pivot point that's snapping. If I push that down, it's the pivot point that's snapping at the grid point. So that's important, because when we go to make our modular pieces, where the pivot is will basically determine where the thing snaps to on the grid. So if you put the pivot in the middle of the object all the time, it's going to be sitting on the inside of things, which is probably not what you need. So yeah, so that's how that works. So obviously setting it to 100 means it limits your options, but if we take this down to say 5 centimeters, then we can move this in 5 centimeter increments, which means that we can make things snap to each other. If I hold Alt down and left click, I can make a duplicate of the object in space, and it will just it's just renames it with another number. But as you can see, I can snap those together really easily because they are in an increment of 5. So that's how we're going to work. So we're going to work in increments of 5 centimeters. The reason we use 5 centimeters as our kind of like main thing is that beyond that, we're into 1 centimeter, which is basically, well, it's pretty much like not having a grid. So 5 centimeters is the smallest grid size increment we can work with. So that's how we're going to set max up to work. So one of the issues you might have is that because we brought these two objects came in with different scale settings, so they have different offsets, which can be quite annoying. You can change that. So say we wanted to work to a I don't know, 5th grid. I've offset this at increments of 5, and it'll keep the offset now. So now I can never get it back onto the grid. So what you should be able to do is under transform is snap align, snap origin to or align origin to grid, and then what it'll do is it'll snap it to the nearest grid space. I can do the same with this one. So right click and snap align and align origin to grid, and it'll snap to the nearest one. And then now if we've got both of these objects, we should now be able to snap them. So if you find that rather than having to delete everything, you can just do that, which is quite useful. But what probably is the most useful thing to do is to just stick to an increment that works for you, and then those things should sort of snap together reasonably well. But sometimes you bring an object in, it doesn't quite snap, and it gets really frustrating. So if you just right click, transform, snap align, even snap origin to grid. I think we'll do a similar thing. Yeah, so that's probably us set up and ready to go with that. The other thing is you can do the same with angles as well. So you can set an angle. So you can do angle increments of like 15 degrees and have that set up. So if I rotate this now, it'll only rotate in, you can see, and it gives you a display. You can actually see it on here of how it's rotating. So that's really useful as well. And you should set your objects really up to observe that. And you can do the same with scale, but you don't use that so much. So that's us ready to go. We just need to now jump over into Max and set Max up to behave in pretty much the same way, so that when we make things in Max and we bring them across into Unreal, they're exactly the same.